Okay. Okay, before we have our committee reports, we've got some people to make short announcements this evening. And let's start with the Sunrise people. Christina Barrera, would you come up and introduce these people, please?
All right. Hello. I'm Christina. I'm the secretary of the Dallas Sierra Club, and I am here to introduce Hope and Sunny from the Sunrise Movement in Dallas. It's a national movement, and this is the Dallas branch that just sprung up in December. So just getting started. They're a youth-led movement designed to help propel the Green New Deal and other climate initiatives. And so, yeah, I'll hand it over to them so they can tell you a little bit more about themselves.
Thank you, Christina. I'm just going to come over to the center. My name is Sunny, or some of you might know me as Harman. When I was young, I actually spent a lot of time with my grandparents in India. And while I was there, we would hear music every morning at 4:30. And I would look to my left, look to my right, and see that my grandparents had gotten out of bed and fall back to sleep. And I didn't really think much of it until I learned later that my grandparents woke up that early because that's when the water arrived at our house. And I learned that the music played until 6 in the morning because it came from our water filter. And the experience really came home to me when I was out playing soccer one day, 100 degrees, hot and humid, got back to the living room to find it full of people, dressed in colorful clothing, laughing, with the ceiling fan on overhead because we didn't have AC in the apartment. And I asked my grandmother, hey, can I have some water? And she said, yes, but I have to go boil it first. Let me get to that. And so when I got back to the US and I just went to my fridge and got my water, I was like, wow, this is a very different experience. And with climate change happening now, we see it in Australia, we see it in California, we see it in Houston. My friend's house in Houston flooded 3 times 3 years in a row. It's becoming really clear that we need to take immediate action. And the good news is that all of the solutions we need already exist. We already have solar power, we already have electric vehicles, we already have transit-oriented development, and all of these things that we need, we just need the political will to put those things into place to make sure that we have a livable future. And that's what Sunrise is really focused on, is developing that political will from young people especially, because our lives are the ones that are most at stake, to ensure that we can pass progressive climate policy that gets us to where we need to be. And that starts immediately. It starts with the 2020 election cycle and building the people power so that as soon as the new administration is sworn in January, we're having mass strikes across the US to demand a Green New Deal for our future. So that's a little bit about us. We are starting off strong here in Dallas. We launched in December. We've got 50-ish active members, a leadership team of 12, growing really quickly. Tomorrow we will be speaking at City Hall. We would love for all of you to join us. Wear your black shirts in solidarity. We'll be talking to the city about the climate action plan and asking them to make it more aggressive. And then we have meetings every Wednesday night to continue to build our people power and continue to influence politics locally. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hope to speak a little bit more.
Just a quick little plug. So tomorrow is really important. Love to see you all there, and feel free to come up to us with any questions about what we're actually doing at City Hall tomorrow. But for future reference, I'm also going to be planning hopefully some workshops and collaboration with other organizations here, because I noticed that there are so many amazing organizations like Sierra Club and so many others in the city that we would love to work with and collaborate with. So our base is diverse and educated, and we have community building opportunities. So I will be working on those workshops as well. So stay tuned, because I'm sure we will try to get some collaboration with Sierra Club at some point. So that was it. Thanks, guys.
There is no other organization like the Sierra Club. Okay, thank you guys. Now I would like
Around, so feel free to grab us later on.
now I would like to bring up a fellow named Mark Stevens who works for Patagonia. And he's going to tell you what he's doing here and what's going on with Patagonia in Dallas. He's going to do that quite briefly.
I prefer to talk loudly. Can you guys hear me okay without the mic?
Yes.
No,
Who said no? It's
the guy recording the meeting.
Ah, got it. Okay, fair enough. All right, thanks for giving me a couple minutes. I'll be brief. My name is Mark Stevens. I work for Patagonia. I support our grant making and the advocacy that we do in our stores. Each store has a budget that they use to give grants to local environmental groups, and we're figuring out how to do advocacy from our stores, how to turn our employees and our customers into advocates for clean air, clean water, clean soil, public lands, and to fight climate change. I'm in town today because we're opening a store soon in Deep Ellum. We're hoping that the store will open on March 25th, fingers crossed. And so I came to town today to meet with the local environmental groups, to learn the community. I owe Sunny an email to somehow knew I was coming. And so I'm going to spend some time in town getting to know the environmental community, share the things that we do to form partnerships. I mentioned grant making. We also can host events at our stores. We push out messages on social media. We like to be a megaphone for the smaller groups that don't have as loud a voice as we do. So, and I'm really glad that I got here in time for this meeting tonight, because I think hearing the committee reports will help me learn more about what's going on in the community, what are the big issues, and how we can support. So thank you for letting me make a little speech and including me in the meeting.
Thanks, Mark.
I hope that Patagonia and the Dallas Sierra Club will be in bed before too long together. Now, where's the envoy from Molly Rook? He's got an announcement. I forgot your name, sir. You just have to introduce yourself and give your announcement.
My name is Jimmy Hosh. I'm working with Molly Rook with 350 Dallas. And I'm personally working with some students from Townview Magnuson. I have handed out a flyer, and I have a few more left for those who don't have one. 2 sides of paper, so I have 2 announcements. On the first side is Turn Date the ISD Green. I'm here to ask your help in getting Dallas Independent School District Board of Directors to recognize that they have a responsibility for doing something about the climate change problem. They don't recognize that at the moment. The students and other organizations, including the Sierra Club, have been involved with putting together a resolution that will be voted on this coming 27th of February, a Thursday night at the board meeting, to resolve that the DISD board will establish a committee to start writing down what it is they should be doing for climate change. It is a step toward getting some green buildings built with the 2020 bond money that you all will get an opportunity to pay for. At the moment, there is not a single word about climate change, energy efficiency, conservation, nothing in that bill. And this is the first step to change that. On the back of the piece of paper is a list of the things that you can do if you want to put solar panels on your house and work with Solar United Neighbors in the cooperative that they are putting together right now in Dallas County to pull together people who want to put solar on their house. They have already gone out for bids with an open bidding process for installers, and everybody who wants to sign on to this cooperative can participate in the group buy discounts that will ensue. It is a nonprofit organization started in Washington, D.C. by a single mom. It is now in about more than a dozen states, and Texas is the most recent location that they've been working. They have about 4 or 5 co-ops already operating in the Houston area, and they're just trying to get started in Dallas. So if you're tired of sitting around talking about solar panels and you want to actually do something, this is the least expensive and easiest way to get it done. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am?
Do you need to be a resident in Dallas for the BISD?
It helps. My recommendation is go to the website on the back. They will deal with you individually if you're outside of Dallas County. This is not the last cooperative that they're going to be having. It's only the first.
That's for Dallas County, not City of Dallas.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, whole county.
The whole county.
So I heard City of Dallas is doing a climate action plan. Does that mean Dallas IC has to?
Dallas ISD doesn't have to do anything, and they will be glad to tell you that. The point is that, yes, City of Dallas is writing a climate action plan. They expect all of the entities in Dallas, including DISD, to pull their weight. Unfortunately, in my opinion, and from my observations, the bulk of the board doesn't quite understand what that means, and we have to help them along.
Okay. Thank you. Were there any other announcements that had to be made that I've forgotten about? Okay. Can you hear me? I'm Leighton Weiss. I'm with the Friends of North Haven Trail. Are everybody in here familiar with what the North Haven Trail is? Runs straight across North Dallas. This coming Saturday, they're having the grand opening for the last section of the trail, which will open. It's the section that runs from roughly where the Y is, Town North Y, over to where Preston Road is. The ribbon cutting will be at 9 a.m. at the Town North Y, and the festivities run from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of money raising there to support efforts to beautify the trail, but also there'll be some fun activities for kids and adults, food trucks and other things. There's also a ride beginning at 8:30 a.m. at Inwood and Inwood and North Haven Road. There's a parking lot there, and the ride will be led by Council Member Jennifer Gates over to the Y, and then they will open the events there accordingly. So hopefully all of you will try to make it out. It'll be a good time and celebrate the opening of the trail. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, now we're going to get to our regular committee reports, which will be kept brief, I trust, this evening. We'll start with Conservation and Dick Goldie.
Thank you very much. You all know about how activists have been engaging investment brokerages that finance dirty fuel, how we've been protesting and working with the companies that produce it and do all kinds of things with it. There's a new kind of movement to go to the insurers of the dirty companies and tell them that they've got to stop doing it. And the first opportunity to do that, I think, in the country is going to be in Plano next Monday, kind of directed by Texas Campaign for the Environment. Now that is, I guess the information more is on our website if you'll look for it there. But that's Monday morning. We hope to have a good crowd for that. Next slide, please. Oh, if anybody owns any stock or knows anybody who's a shareholder of Liberty Mutual, those people can get in and they can ask questions. And Corey Troiani has a list of appropriate questions to ask. So hopefully we'll have some from that. Thank you. We're still open to have comments to the city on the city's climate action plan. If you haven't done this, please do that before the 3rd of March. And there's an item B15 to mark down. I forgot what that is, but if you're so interested, look that up. That's one that needs more emphasis. I think it is on transportation. And the last thing is, we have a clipboard that I'll circulate, 2 of them, to sign up for different conservation events, mainly tabling at different colleges and events in the next couple of months, which are a very busy time. So please help us on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Dick, are you all scheduled up for Earth Week already with tabling and stuff?
This is what we're asking for,
Okay.
to fill the slots for that, among other things.
All right. Does anyone want to talk about the outings committee?
I do.
Okay. Mark is out of town.
Yeah, our fearless leader is not here. My name's Arthur Kuhn, and I am a past outings chair, but so I got drafted to tell you a few things. First of all, who was on Big Bend bus trip? Anybody in here? Just one. And I went 2. So we just came back with a Big Bend bus trip, and really want to thank, for the whole club, to thank the leaders who put that together, because it was a tough time. As you know, we had a little bit of a storm last week, and the highway I-20 between Sweetwater and Midland, Odessa was basically shut down. So the bus had to be the whole trip had to be rejiggered, and the bus left a day late. But everybody had a great time, and a real thank you goes to the trip leaders and Mark Stein and the people who are back here who got everything redone, all the schedules redone, and made it happen. So everybody had a great time. I was there leading one of the trips, and it was fun. So if you haven't gone on one of our bus trips, and particularly to Big Bend, the next time one comes around, be sure and sign up. So here's a couple things going on. First of all, if you've not been backpacking, if you've never been backpacking, or you haven't been backpacking in a long time, we've got something great for you, and that is our Beginner Backpacking 101 class. That is this coming Saturday, the 15th. So look for it on our website, and you can sign up on our website for it. We'd like to get sign-ups done by Thursday or so we can get food for everybody for lunch, because we're going to use some backpacking food for lunch. But this is the best class in Dallas for this. There's an outdoor organization that has a whole bunch of beginner classes, but ours is better and cheaper. So it's the one you want to go to. And we'll have 1 or 2 beginner trips to go on shortly after that. We got a couple of day hikes coming up. Saturday the 29th, there's a day hike through some of the Plano City Park areas. And on the March 28th, there's a day hike at Cedar Ridge Preserve. Cedar Ridge Preserve is one of the areas that we do volunteer work to maintain the trails. And right here, Ginger is if you want to volunteer to help maintain trails down there, Ginger's the one to talk to. So we can, on this particular hike, you can hike on some of the trails that the Sierra Club helps maintain. And last but not least, I will tell you about the next bus trip we have coming up. It's to Bandelier National Monument in New Mexico. We have not been there since 2013. We used to go every other year, but they had a big fire there, and a lot of the areas were damaged. Well, it's come back, and it's now ready for us to come back also. So we've got a trip planned May 21st through 25th, and it will be on the website. I think the save the dates are on the website right now, but we'll have the full details for everybody to sign up for that bus trip probably by the end of the month. So look for that. It should be a great place, a great time to go there, see how the park is recovered from the fire, and see some of the great stuff that is there at the Bandelier. And that's it.
Thank you, Arthur. That's why down there in Los Alamos National Lab.
Yeah.
And it took out a good part of the town of Los Alamos. So that ought to be really good elk habitat now. Next committee, Ginger. Let's see what the membership committee has to say. Shirts,
Hi, everybody. We still have one calendar left. No, Dale got it. So, I think I might have some calendars in my car. If you really want one, I'll give it to you for half price tonight. Anyway, also we have all these awesome shirts. We have small, medium, and large. The green ones are 10. The white ones, polos, are 15. So we really want to try, to get rid of those, and it's good for the club. And then we have a picnic coming up on April 11th for free, for lots of fun, lots of food, and lots of people, and you guys can meet everybody and just hang out at Churchill Park from 10 to 2. It is a Saturday, so come on out to that. We're doing that twice a year now. And then, last but not least, Bardwell Lake. We're getting together for an iNaturalist bird count. Bardwell Lake for, it's like a week long, but you can show up for a day or 7 days, however long you want. Contact myself or Stephanie Hebert. She's a ranger, she's out there, and there's her information, and you can get my information on Dallas Sierra Club website. And so we really need, a lot of people. I signed up 10 people tentatively. I would like 20. And it's really easy, and it's less than an hour away, so try and contact us for that and join us. It'll be fun. Thank you.
Ginger, do you need iNaturalist on your cell phone to do the BioBlitz?
You have to download the app, yes.
But they want you to have it when you go out there. They want you to have iNaturalist on your phone.
Yes.
Okay. What other committees do we have that I have forgotten? Are we down to political? Not that that's the least. We're waiting on a politician, so any other committees? No. Okay, David, it's time for the political committee report.
Thank you all. David Griggs, the political chair for the Dallas group and for the Lone Star chapter. We have a special guest coming who should be here in about 5 minutes. She may come and talk, or she might stay till the end, but it's Teresa Daniels. Some of you may know her as a Dallas County Commissioner, one of the 4 commissioners elected countywide, and then of course the county judge, Clay Jenkins, is elected at large all over Dallas County. But it's a body that's very important to our political will, and Commissioner Daniel has done a lot for us, helping resolutions and other issues before the Dallas County Commission. So she actually has an opponent in the primary, so that's the reason why we needed her to be speaking tonight. Toward the fall, we'll have quite a few other candidates for the general election who are not challenged in the primary. But just remember that if you live in Dallas County and you're voting in the primary, she'll be running in the Democratic primary. Remember her, Dr. Teresa Daniel. She is the incumbent, and she will be coming here and hopefully will share with us for 3 or 4 minutes in a little bit. The other thing that you need to know is our website, turntexasgreen.org, has the endorsements up for some of the first incumbents in the legislature that we have endorsed. There are 37 of them out of the 150 that we've made early endorsements of. And the Turn Texas Green website, which I think is going to come up here in a moment, will feature those. You can go to 2020 endorsements and find out who they are. You need to know what your House district is, obviously. But all of the freshmen who were elected last time in Dallas County, who did so well for environmental issues, have been re-endorsed. Well, it's not working. Okay. But just remember that. TurnTexasGreen.org is the website. You can donate there. If you want to give $5 or $5,000, we'll take it. All right, we'll do a lot with it, and we hope that you will support our efforts. So that's all I have for now, unless Teresa's coming out.
Not to come out.
Okay.
We misspelled it the first time.
Oh, okay. TurnTexasGreen.org. Okay. That's it. All right, so, right, 2020 endorsements right here, if you want to check on that, and you will see what is there. Can you check, click on that? Yes.
Teresa Daniel, District 1, about what part of Dallas County is that?
It is sort of northeastern Dallas County. You can ask her to describe the district when she gets here. but it's Lakewood, I guess Lake Highlands, the White Rock Great Lake area, kind of that part of Dallas County. So some of you obviously live in that part of Dallas County, and hopefully you will do that. But now this has to do with the state legislative endorsements. And if you click on it while it's going through, anyway, just go there, explore the website, and I think you'll enjoy what you have. You can actually get it on your phone as well.
There it goes.
Okay, there we go. House incumbents, there we go. I'll go down here to 100. Here is Anne-Marie Robles at 102. That's kind of the Richardson, far north Dallas area, Rafael Anchia. It goes from Oak Cliff up on the western side of Dallas County. Jessica Gonzalez is 104. That's part of Oak Cliff. Terry Mesa, that's Irving. Victoria Nayave, that is old East Dallas, on over to Mesquite, in that area. Carl Sherman, that's I believe the DeSoto area. Julie Johnson, that's this area, 115. Carroll Farmers Branch and Coppell. And then that's it. That's for this area. So those are the endorsements that we
John Turner.
John Turner, that's right. I missed John. He's in 114. Where is he? All right. Well, that's kind of what we used to call North Dallas. It's not far north, but north Dallas. All right. Any other questions about that? All right. The early vote starts on the 18th of February, and it goes till the end of the month. And then March 3rd, Tuesday, March 3rd is the primary. Both parties have their primary on the same day.
So tell everybody why it's so important that we turn the Texas legislature into the Democratic Texas.
Well, the reason is that we're going to have a better chance of getting our priorities done in the legislative session in 2021, which starts in January. But there's another important reason. Redistricting occurs every 10 years after the census, and we will have a census in the next couple of months. And so in the 2021 legislative session, we draw the lines again. And the last time around, the Republicans drew the lines the way they wanted them, and it was very difficult for Democrats to be competitive. This year, it may change if there's a majority of Democrats in the House. We had a grading system for our selection of candidates. They had to score 75% or better. And all 37, go back to the incumbents, all 37 of these people scored 75% or better. The majority of the Republicans were in the 10s, 20s, and 30%. So that kind of tells you kind of where we are with regard to that. Some of them scored really well, like in the 40s. But these 37 scored 75% or better, so we gave them a passing grade. So that's the reason why it's important. It's our priorities for environmental protection are protected by the candidates that have made our score and done that. And occasionally there's a Democrat that doesn't make it. There was a Democrat down in Houston who scored 39. One of the freshmen. She represents an oil and gas district. She won by 19 votes. She was like barely elected last time, and she's scared to death that they're coming after her. So she voted with her constituencies. And so we didn't endorse her just because she was a Democratic candidate. But anyway, that's our criteria. They have to actually vote the way that we need them to vote to support our priorities. So, any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Let me go see if she's coming in the building.
I'm going to wait a few seconds to see if is it Dr. Daniels is here yet?
Tell us a joke, Dan.
Well.
A PG rated joke.
Oh. Don't know it.
Did we learn what the program for next week is? Next month?
Well, let's wait for the program chairs to get up here and tell us about the program today. Okay, so we're going to move on to our program now. We're going to get the program.
You might want to mention after the meeting, going to get some nachos.
No, I don't want to. I was gonna do that after the program, but since it's already been done, read this. If you're hungry, after we adjourn, we're gonna go here, a bunch of us are, and we're gonna eat dinner. It's up on Midway, just south of Beltline, Blue Goose Cantina. It's a good place. Plus, they have $2 frozen margaritas.
Makes it a better place.
Makes it even better.
Isn't there free nachos?
Oh, I don't see that flashing sign, John. Where's that flashing sign?
Wrong slideshow.
Wrong slideshow. Okay. Yes, we will hit. If you come, we'll buy a couple of trays of nachos for free that you can munch on while you're waiting for your food. So, but now we need to get on to tonight's program, so I'm going to ask Victoria Howard and Renee Robertson to come up and introduce the program and whatever else we need to hear about future programs.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. I'm glad you all came out. I know this is a rainy, cold night, but I'm glad you came. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes. Okay. Our speaker, well, you want to do that? Okay. The speaker we're going to have, I'll go ahead and let you get familiar with our speaker. It is Steve Hauser. He is a consulting arborist as well as certified arborist with the International Society of Arboriculture. He has been a tree climber and consulting arborist for over 40 years in the DFW area. He is certified as a master gardener with the Dallas County chapter and is certified Texas Master Naturalist with the North Texas chapter. He contributes over 1,000 hours, and if you think of it, if any of you volunteer, think about how we volunteer in terms of 8 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours. He has 1,000 hours each year toward worthy causes and works to educate the public regarding tree and forest-related issues. And with that being said, after Victoria tells you what's coming up, we would like to welcome him. We're glad he came, and Steve Hauser is our speaker.
So just remember to show up for next month's meeting as well. We're going to have Shelley White from the Trinity River Audubon Society come and talk about the inroads they're making there and also some great hiking and bird watching opportunities. So mark the calendar, second Tuesday of March. And without further ado, Steve.
Just one more. I have to do. I forgot. How many people are here for the first time tonight? Could I see a show of hands? Well, we'd like you to get one of these forms up here and fill it out. We'll be glad to send you our free email newsletter every month. You'll know what's going on in the Dallas Sierra Club, okay? Now, we'll turn it over to Steve Hauser. You don't need that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, to speak with like-minded people for a change. I always like doing that. That's a big benefit. And I'm really thrilled to be here, but also to see folks like Airman, the young folks, getting involved in what we do and becoming more active, as well as Hope. There's a group of them that are getting started, starting to become more vocal, more active. And I couldn't be more thrilled. There were some of us that were wondering when the younger generation was going to start to stand up. So we are thrilled to see that they're starting to stand up. So one of my first questions is, do you guys know many of the benefits of trees? I always try to talk about benefits of trees for just a minute, just to make sure that you know. You're the Sierra Club, you already know. They clean your air, but they also clean your water and your soil. They add greatly to your health, your sense of well-being, your quality of life, your economic future, and many other things. Just with air quality alone, Dallas has been in non-attainment with air quality standards for 27 years now. So that's a big issue. But trees absorb carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, and ozone. A lot of stuff that's not good for your air quality. Upper level ozone is good. It protects us from the sun. Lower level ozone is not so good. It also helps to clean your water. You guys know as it filters through, it goes through the foliage, it's filtered. As it goes through the roots, it's filtered. But trees also transpire moisture into the air that's picked up travels through the vascular system, and these medium and larger trees are transpiring and cleaning up to 300 to 400 gallons of water each day. That's more than what most people realize. So, and soil is an easy one. We have polluted soil on these brownfield sites. We use trees and plants to help absorb that. It's called bio or phytoremediation. So, in essence, a healthy forest equals a healthy community. That's the basic message. So, if you see something like this, you know you might have a problem in your town. A city without trees isn't fit for a dog, right? So, who was the most prominent advocate in trees and forests in the past? Do you know?
John Muir.
John Muir, that's a good one. I mean in Texas. Maybe I should say in Texas. Ned Fritz, thank you. Ned and Jeannie Fritz. But also Janice Besantzen, kind of their right-hand person. You know, a lot of people have heroes that are politicians and sports figures and business people. Ned and Jeannie and Janice have always been some of my biggest heroes that I actually knew. I mean, John Muir is a good one, and there's a few others. But he changed a lot of how I did things and taught me an awful lot many years ago. So it's justified that I should say a few words about him. So tree advocacy procedures, once I started to learn them, they were things that needed to be passed along to future generations. I think it's very important. People don't appreciate an asset that they don't fully understand to begin with, which is why we talk a lot about the benefits of trees. So why is there a need for forest advocates? I kind of feel like I'm preaching to the choir a little bit here, but there's many examples. This is a bunch of trees that were topped on Forest Lane a few years ago. And the owner of the property thought, well, I'll cut all the tops out of them. That way I pretty much killed them, but I don't have to mitigate and pay for their replacement. Well, we were able to convince the city arborist that that amounts to the removal or the loss of the tree. So they ended up fined over $100,000 for topping those trees. We also had Jennifer Staubach Gates was behind this one, trying to help to get it to happen as well. So what was the first major battle over trees in our area? Does anybody know? See, you got to be around a long time. I think Rita would probably know. There's a few of you that might remember this. But it was a battle involving trees at Presbyterian Hospital in Dallas. In 1987 and 88, I worked there as an arborist. I'm an arborist by profession. It was a third of my company's business working for the hospital. And the gentleman that I worked for, Bill Seaman, he's one of our trustees with the Historic Tree Coalition, was the landscape director. And we worked to carefully build these buildings around 2 bur oaks, as well as bur oaks are really nice big trees, as well as a group of other trees. And we built it on pier and beam. We carefully nursed these trees through the construction, and we were very proud to have preserved them in the 80s. So, in 1994, the hospital came to me as their arborist and says, we want an estimate to remove those 2 big bur oaks and about 60 or 70 other trees. So that was a life-changing time for me. It was a question of, do I want to cut down these massive big trees that I just worked hard to preserve? And, you know, to me it was no. And I told them, you know, that's not the right thing to do. Can't you regenerate your plans or do something different? Now it's in our plans, that's what we're going to do. We can get somebody else. And I had to think about it because that's a third of my business at the time. And I was a little company back in the 80s. So I thought, well, you know, I'm not going to cut them down. Not only that, but I'm going to fight you for them. And they thought that was very funny. I didn't think it was very funny at the time. So becoming an advocate seemed the right thing to do. When I went back to the people in the company, I told them I was going to take them to task over this. They said that was the stupidest thing I've ever heard somebody do. So it was a difficult time for me. But that's when I went to Ned and Jeannie Fritz, some other friends like Janice Besantzen. What do you guys think about this? And of course, you know what Ned said. Let's fight them. Let's go, of course. So that began my education from Mr. Ned, I think. So Bill Seaman, the guy I mentioned, and Ned and Jeannie, Janice. Dr. Mary Ellen Blunzer is here in the picture. She's one of the hospital doctors that we solicited, one of a number that we solicited to help preserve these trees. Bob
Wolin was an attorney and his wife joined us. And we decided to form, at the time it was the Dallas Historic Tree Coalition. Now it's the Texas Historic Tree Coalition. And if you have questions, our president is back in the back of the room. She's here, Mary Gray. She's been our president for a number of years, and she does a fabulous job. So we're an all-volunteer organization that works to find, research, recognize, and celebrate our most significant trees in the area as well as around the state. And this is really a quote from Mary. The Historic Tree Coalition is very passionate about bringing our story to the public. That's what we do. So back to the hospital, and I'm going to touch briefly on this, and I'm going to go on to other things. But we wanted to meet with the hospital. They weren't very interested yet. So we researched the trees and the site, and we found out this is a Reynolds Presbyterian orphanage for children. So we contacted the Reynolds Presbyterian people, and Melba Lindsay, one of many of the orphans, wrote letters to the hospital. And they said, we didn't have parents. Those big bur oaks are our parents. Don't cut down our parents. I mean, it was things that were really heart-wrenching. And I was really glad to have their support behind us. It was like, save our trees. We didn't have parents. We played around these things. So we wrote letters to the hospital board of directors, of course. It was in the media, in the newspapers. We wrote letters to the editor, all the standard things that you would think of. So we developed a game plan that the hospital didn't really like very much, but it included putting signs up around the hospital. And it was, you know, we go out on a limb to save trees. We had a number of different signs. Do you belong to all the right clubs? Branch out. We started to build our membership, you know, over 100 by the time we went this far. And I remember one night we were trying to decide what we were going to put on the signs. There was a deadline the next day. And we were looking at things we could say. And Bill Seaman, a dear friend of mine, says, oh, I got one. How about we're removing limbs at Presbyterian Hospital? I thought, oh, that's pretty good. We all laughed about it. And then we stopped short of it. You know, we thought, you know, that's a little bit over the line. So we didn't ever do that one. But we did put signs around the hospital that really kind of embarrassed them, which was kind of the point. The next thing that we did was run a full-page ad in the Dallas Morning News. You know, would you remove the Alamo or John Neely Bryant's cabin or the trees at Presbyterian? And this is the top half of the ad that we ran. This is the bottom portion of it with a way that people could reach us. They could sign up. They could become members. And we started to gain membership very quickly after this. There was a number of good quotes in there. And they still weren't that interested in working with us. They were still pretty adamant. So a few weeks later, we ran a double full-page ad in the Sunday Dallas Morning News. And we talked about things that people had never heard of, like the urban heat island effect. Now, this was 1995. So this is like 25 years ago. And for people to talk about urban heat island, what is that? You're crazy. What is that stuff? Dollars and Cents, this was about all the benefits of trees, which I could go on for 30 minutes about. Our connection to the history, our quality of life that's being lost, and how we can find some common ground with the hospital. So I think after that one hit, there was enough letters to the hospital that they decided that they might want to meet with us to let us review the plans, which is all we really wanted to do. So we hired our own hospital architect, and there were some prominent people that helped to fund this, fortunately. I was an arborist. I couldn't have afforded all this stuff. But we hired a hospital architect, and they said, yeah, we'll give you 2 weeks to come up with recommendations. Well, it had taken them years to develop their plans, and they said, okay, you get a couple of weeks. So we worked overtime for a couple of weeks to come up with our own plans. And we provided them within the time frame where we'd save not only the 2 giant bur oaks, but about 70 other trees. And we were pretty proud of that, and we thought, this is how you can do it, and you're still going to have all the facilities that you really had in your original plan. So they took it, thought about it, called a press conference a few weeks later, and they said, we've changed our plans, and we're going to save 70% of those trees. So, of course, they didn't give us any credit, But we didn't care about that. We had saved the trees. And for me, it's like Ned says, when you win your first battle, then you're inspired to go on. Since that period of time, we've worked on so many other issues that were tree battles in the area that I've seen people that are excited, they get involved, and then they go to City Hall, then they get depressed, and then they kind of, especially when they lose, they walk away. So it was very hard to find people that were willing to go to City Hall to fight some of these battles. So I stuck this in here. My office people give me a hard time because I still like my old flip phone. I don't know if any of you guys have a flip phone, but I don't really want a smartphone. Maybe I'm just getting old, but I don't need emails 24 hours a day. I don't need all that stuff. So she sent me an email and said, "Oh, we got a new cell phone for you." I was like, "Oh, perfect. That's the one I want right there. I like that, you know. It brings back old memories for me." All right, well, the coalition fought a lot of battles, and this is one of the ladies that was a real trooper downtown for many, many years. Her name was DJ Young, and I never forget, every time she got up in front of council, city plan commission, board of adjustment, she'd say, "My name is DJ Young," and she was never shy at all. "My name is DJ Young, and you're on my property. My family gave this property to the city, and that's why you're on Young Street." And then the next thing out of her mouth was always, "Here we go again." And she'd do this, and man, I love this lady. I loved working with her. We co-chaired the Guardian Committee, which is what we did for many, many years. And it was good to be able to support these people and help them. Reality is we didn't win a whole lot of the battles that we fought. If you'd ever been to City Hall, you know, one of the things that infuriated me right off the bat, I think it was a Board of Adjustments meeting. DJ and I walked in. We were second on the agenda. They saw us walk in. "Oh, here comes the tree people." And we sat down. Our agenda item kept getting bumped until about 11 o'clock at night. And then they said, "Oh, sorry, you tree people. We don't have time for you." And they laughed as they walked out. And that ticked me off so much, I thought, I'm not leaving here for a long time. And actually, during this battle, I started growing my hair. And I said, I'm going to cut it when people start to care about trees. Unfortunately, I haven't had to cut it yet. I'd like to, but I'm not going to, because people just haven't come that far along. Now, we also developed a guidelines for tree advocacy based on some stuff from the Sierra Club, some from Ned, some of it was from all the battles that we had spent down in City Hall. We've updated it a number of years ago. So if you get involved in these kinds of battles, contact Mary or me, and we'll be happy to pass it along to you. Some of it is, I'm going to try to cover some of it, but there's a lot to know. Over time, the Guardian Committee changed procedures. You know, I went from 15 years, people would call me, "Trees are coming down." Okay, I'd drop everything and go running over there. And especially when you lost the battle, and especially when the people that you worked hard for didn't even say thank you, I thought, no, I'm going to teach you how to save your trees if you want to work towards it. Rather than working myself into the ground for battles that people didn't really, if it was, you've heard of the NIMBYs, right? Not in my backyard. When it's their backyard, they're willing to fight, but when it's down the street, somebody else's problem. So we got a little bit more selective over time. We learned working about the city government, standard procedures, and a lot of times the hard way. You know, that's how we found out, because even Ned hadn't spent that much time down there. If you know anything about him, he fought the city over his front yard, for instance, that he wanted to turn into a nature area, and the city wanted to make him mow it because they thought it should be grass. But he won that battle. He's a very smart man. Losing many battles at City Hall. Over the years, the committee lobbied for our first urban forester. We started to try to get some forestry and tree people down there, and that was one of the beginning efforts. One of the other things, when Laura Miller was there, we'd already worked with Laura Miller when she was with the Dallas Observer. She was a writer. She wrote a lot of articles, some of them very scathing, which kind of gave her a reputation, but we worked with her a lot on the tree battles down in Oak Cliff. It was really funny because we'd walk, she'd say, "Come meet with a developer." Okay. We'd walk around and I played more of an arborist. "Here's what you need to do to save your trees." And then we'd walk away and she'd say, "Okay, what do you really think about this guy?" And I said, "Oh man, this guy's a bad one, you know." So it was good to be able to work with her. She helped us to establish an urban forest advisory committee, and for the first time, we kind of became insiders. If you know City Hall in the past, and especially the previous city manager, we weren't going to get very far with her there, unfortunately. So, and Laura Miller knew that. She also climbed with us during the state tree climbing competition. And it was interesting, as tree climbers, they were impressed to see any mayor get up in a tree and climb. But before she left office, we had a mayor's challenge where she climbed a tree and she challenged the other mayors in the area. There's like 5 or 6 other mayors that came and they had a climbing competition. So it was a lot of fun. There's basic procedures that can be followed to be successful. And this is Richard and Bonnie Brown. You might remember a couple of years ago there was a battle over Encore, cutting trees at the Tollway and Forest Lane. They were the two that kind of rallied the support from the neighborhood, and they had a pretty good effect on it. They still had to lose some trees, but when it's the power lines, they have the easement, they own the easement, and they can do whatever they want. But they did have to go back and replant a lot of them because these people became advocates. And you know, the other thing I pointed out to them, and a lot of people don't know this, I'm just going to mention it, if you live along the Tollway or LBJ, one of these major highways, your life expectancy is 3 to 5 years less because of the particulate matter that's coming from all those cars. So the best thing that you can have is that row of trees that help to reduce some of that particulate matter. So it's very important to a neighborhood that's along a tollway. There are personality and character traits that help in being a tree advocate. And I'm telling you this because I've seen a lot of people that wanted to go down there and wanted to fight, but they just probably didn't have the best personality. First of all, you have to be reasonable and responsible. If I'm not reasonable in who I'm talking to and dealing with, they're not going to listen to you very well. It's like Ned used to say, it's an old phrase, but you catch more flies with sugar than you do, or honey than you do with vinegar. So, and that was his way of saying, yeah, if you're spitting vinegar, people aren't going to want to listen to you. And this one started, use your computer and your brain, not your emotions. That one started when we had just started the Dallas Historic Tree Coalition. I was presenting it at the Trinity Blacklands Urban Forestry Council meeting. This is the Forestry Council for our area. And somebody said, we don't want to be connected to tree huggers that chain themselves to trees. And I said, look, we didn't have computers. I said, we use our brains and our writing pens to save trees. There's a difference between having an emotional response. So as Ned told us, try not to get too emotional about these things. Another one is develop tough skin. If you don't have tough skin, you probably don't. You can go to some of these other city halls, but Dallas City Hall, they'll eat you alive down there. Be patient. If you're not patient, you're also going to have problems because you're not going to want to listen to the other side. You have to learn to be able to negotiate with them. Remember that other people have value judgments. And this was Master Naturalist somewhat that used that value judgments as a way to say we don't always agree on things. Your values are much different than mine. You know, for us it's nature. It's a healthy ecology. To them it's basically money, you know. That's what it comes down to. It's like one of my favorite shows is Brother, Where Art Thou? And one of the favorite lines is all about the money, boys. And you think about why we're doing a lot of what we're doing as a Sierra Club or as activists, a lot of times it's about the money, and that's all that matters. And that's very unfortunate. But I also found when you're talking to these people, if you'll ask them, do you care about your children? Do you care about the air that they breathe? Do you care about their future? Then they have to stop and listen. That's not an emotional response. It's just asking them a question which forces them to stop and think. So we always keep calm and we look for common ground with these guys as best as we can. Fighting them, sometimes we have to. If the trees are coming down, and I'll talk about that in a minute, we have to react very quickly. There's not a lot of time to negotiate. So it depends on the type of case that we're dealing with. But we have to be persistent. That's the other thing about like changing the Dallas tree ordinance. If I get a chance and it doesn't get too late, I'll talk briefly about it. But it took 12 years to change the Dallas tree ordinance. And what we have now isn't great, but it's a lot better than what we had before. So know your rights and stand your ground. And that's the other thing you'll learn down there. You have to know how to deal with city government. You know, when it's your turn to speak and how long you have to speak and other things. And then you have to stand your ground because they will certainly challenge you in a lot of these city halls. So there's two primary kinds of projects that we deal with. The first one being the short fuse. People call us, there's a bulldozer on site, he's bulldozing trees, what can we do? That's a little bit different than the longer fuse where it's most commonly a zoning sign. If you see a zoning sign on one of these properties, you probably, and you care about what's on that property, especially trees, you better be looking into it because it's likely those trees are going to be lost in the future. And you get ahead of the game when they put those signs up. Now you have to be watchful because they'll put those signs in a place where you can't hardly see them and say, yeah, we posted it. Yeah, but nobody could see it sometimes. So you've got to look for those babies. All right, longer fuse project, a little bit easier. The zoning change request is pretty much a red flag that we watch for. Signs are often placed where they're not visible. We call the city planners. We try to find out as much as we can. Sometimes we can even figure out who's developing the property, contact them to find out if we can negotiate. Now, this is an important point about doing your homework. This is one of the things we learned the hard way. You heard this roundabout, somebody told me this, somebody told me this. You go running to City Hall and saying, well, somebody told me this. Well, if you don't have proof, they're going to yank your feet right out from under you. So we always do our homework and we get our facts correct. That makes us much harder to deal with because we have the facts. Meet the property owner, developer, or builder to negotiate if possible. We always try to go there. Develop a written position. What do we hope to accomplish? Do we want to save some trees? Do we want to save all the trees? These are questions that we start to ask. Sometimes it's a homeowner group that we're dealing with. Develop a game plan. Seek advice from people who know how to advocate for a cause or how to fight City Hall. That's always important. And then we always like the elevator speech. The elevator speech we've used a lot at City Halls, and I hate to say this, but we sometimes wait for somebody that we know is going to leave at a certain time at this elevator, and we just wait for that person to come there. And you've got maybe 10 or 15, 20 seconds you can talk to them as you're walking along, and sometimes that works. So the elevator speech, if you can say everything you need to say in 30 seconds, you can do an elevator speech, and sometimes you can convince these people to change their mind about something. You know, I was headed to a presentation a couple of years ago, and I love being an arborist. I like being an advocate. I don't like our traffic in town. I was driving, and I always have a tea with me. I was driving to a presentation. A lady pulls out in front of me, and I dumped that tea all over myself. And I got to the presentation. You know, it's hard to start a presentation when the first word's out of your mouth, no, I didn't pee on myself. So, needless to say, I carry an extra pair of pants in my truck from now on. So appoint a representative and a spokesperson. That's very important to us as people that are trying to help you. When you have 5 people that are all trying to run the show, it becomes very difficult versus appointing a representative or a spokesperson, especially when it comes to the media. So we contact other groups, individuals, develop a base of support, which is always critical. You can't do these things by yourself. You have to build this group of support. Call or write the property owner, council person, plan commission, that's kind of a given. Develop a social media campaign. And this has worked very well. There were some of these encore battles like Richard and Bonnie I was telling you about. They did the change.org and they got 2,000 or 3,000 signatures within a week's time. So it's incredible. Now, one of the other things we found out, and you guys might know of a better way to do this than change.org, once you sign that petition, you start getting more junk email, which is unfortunate. It's one of the things I don't like about it, but it's very strong to meet with somebody and say, here's a petition with 1,000 signatures that we need you to do whatever it is. So if there's a better way to do that in the future, I'd like to know it. We always develop a press release, Contact your local media. Of course, that's pretty much a given. And I'd like to write more. We've got our guidelines for advocacy. I could probably write another 4 or 5 pages about dealing with the media. Sierra Club may already have some of that written. I should check with you guys first. But there is basic things that we try to do with the media to be effective. Check with your city arborists a lot of times to make sure that they have tree removals permits, and sometimes protective fencing around the trees is important. We always try to monitor these sites to make sure the fences are up. When they're not, sometimes we take pictures of it. When people are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, we take pictures of it as well. Saving a tree requires more than leaving it standing. And we like to see these protection area, especially signs around these trees that help to tell people to stay away from them. So when we lose a battle, we take some comfort by providing a special award. We haven't done this in a number of years. I forgot this was in here. We haven't done this in a number of years, but to the worst offender, the biggest tree muggers, a lot of times we would give them the Big Ugly Stump Award, which they never like to receive that, and as a matter of fact, they can tick them off, but it was always humorous to us. We felt better about losing the trees if we gave them this illustrious award, I guess I would say. So we like doing that in the newsletter. Did you know that trees, old trees especially, are where falcons like to rest? And here's some proof positive. Now, I did that in a presentation not long ago, and this one young lady said, "I don't see a falcon in there." I thought, well, I guess you got to be a certain age before that really works very well for you. Okay, the short fuse project, it's a lot the same, but we've got to react very quickly. There's a bulldozer on the site. I had one lady, and we actually gave her an award many years ago, stopped a D9 Caterpillar on a Saturday morning in her bathrobe. Now that's my kind of tree huggers. Out there stopping, you're stopping, and she stopped this guy. We went to this McKinney, went to their city council, and they ended up saving all the trees behind her house and turning it into a park, just because this lady was willing to go out there and stop them. In Dallas, you can call 311. Does a little bit of good to let them know what's going on. They'll say, see it, snap it, and send it so you can send them a picture of the violation, whatever it may be. You always want to contact your city officials, of course. We always try to document the destruction as best as we can. And when you're out there, you got to be cautious, because when somebody's doing something illegal and you're out there taking pictures, you're putting yourself at a little bit of risk. So you've got to be cautious about how you do that. We always try to write down the license numbers and ask people their names and things. That makes them a little bit nervous, and sometimes they leave and the job doesn't get done because they're worried they know they're doing something illegal. If time allows, we'll interface our efforts, of course, with other groups. There's power always in numbers. The social media campaign, press releases, and contact the media. I've learned a lot about social media, but 10 or 15 years ago, I didn't know anything about it. It's the folks like Hope and Airman and my own daughter sometimes teach me a lot about that as time goes on. Of course, as a last resort, you can always chain yourself to a tree. Now, this was some folks in Casa View that were trying to save some trees, and they did save a few of those trees. This was a lady that was fighting Encore, so she decides to get up in her tree with her BB gun and chases off Encore. Very cool lady. I like this lady, but that's pretty risky. You know, fortunately, they could see it was a BB gun, but you know, they came back because it's Encore's easement. They come back with the police later, and she still has to do it. But that made the media in China and Japan, and she was getting letters from those people congratulating her. So you can always tell when a qualified arborist is not involved in the plans. And this is a perfect example. This is in South Dallas, and yeah, the plans looked great. I gave it a little bit of space, but they didn't look at the elevations. So that can certainly be a problem. Prepare for future tree removals in your area. If you're concerned about trees in your area, you need to go out and start looking at them. Take pictures of them and things like that, because you may wake up one day and they're gone. Discuss the issues with your neighborhood association. Appoint leaders for your neighborhood if you can. Provide training. Consider listing some of the important sites that you have. And we had our Guardian Committee do that in certain areas, and now we can go back and find those photographs of those trees, for instance, if they become threatened in the future. And we often fight battles we know we're going to lose. And I know that sounds foolish, but we feel better knowing somebody spoke up and somebody fought the battles. Even if we lost, at least we sleep better at night knowing we tried. And that means a lot to us. We fought a lot of battles. We knew there was no chance, but we still had to try. So mature trees are our only outdoor filters, of course. They are our lungs of our cities. It makes no sense to destroy ourselves. We have to work together to be more successful as advocates for trees in the forest. Advocacy guidelines, I just mentioned those that we've created if you need them in the future. We don't keep them on the website because your opposition can pull them off. And we don't really want them knowing what we're doing. So these are some of the steps that are in that guide. There's more than what I've tried to cover. But we always try to start new advocates like Ehrman and Hope here and others. You know, we look at them as acorns that we plant. Some of them grow to be huge giants, and some of them wither and die. You just don't ever know. And that's true. That's just how it works. This is the oldest tree in the area, just by the way. It's a over 400-year-old bur oak up in Plano in Bob Woodruff Park. So, and the reason we knew that, we knew it was over 200 years old. This plaque is about to be replaced by the Historic Tree Coalition in the next couple of months, and we'll recognize it as being over 400 years old. A limb broke out of it right here. You can see where there's kind of a hole in the canopy. This limb, that's about 50 feet off the ground. We started to ring date it. That limb is 225 years old. So fascinating tree, one of my favorites, and one that's well worth preserving. And then there's always other tree defenses. Do you know what this guy is? The Lorax. See, I knew you guys would know, but there's a lot of groups that's like, oh, I don't know what that thing is. It's really funny. And of course, our favorite tree huggers, the people that care about the trees. You know, we often say that people care about trees, obviously care about a lot of others as well. So one of the other things I was going to cover, we need more tree huggers, of course. The Dallas Tree Ordinance, I'm not going to go into this in any detail because I'm probably starting to run a little bit late, but we worked on it first off in 1993 was when it was originally established. 2005 was when Laura Miller helped us to get started meeting with these builders and developers to try to negotiate changes, which we did. And we did a great job of it. We took it to council in 2009, 5 years of working on it, or 4 years of working on it. And they said, okay, yeah, we'll look at it. We'll get back to you. And, of course, that got stuck on the shelf. And all those years of negotiation meant absolutely nothing. So in 2014, we finally convinced the council and the city managers to let us work on it again. So 2014, it took another 4 years before we finally got it through council. It's not perfect. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but it does have a lot of good, sustainable practices that we incentivized. One of the important ones was this planned developments. If you know anything about PDs, it's what they call them. That's a way to skirt around all of your city codes and do almost anything that you want. So we made it where you have to have a supermajority of council to be able to get around them. So, or get around the tree ordinance, I mean. All right, I won't go into these too much. There's a lot of other incentives for water-wise designs, engineered soils, enhanced buffer zones, rain gardens, bioswales, many of the things that you guys would want to see in the future. We're trying to incentivize it so that they will realize this is the way to go. Look at all the incentives I get out of this as well. And some trees just have weird growth. That's the briefest way to describe it. This is, I always wanted to be a tree, so this is a tree costume that I put on at EarthX and some of these others. This is my older sister that decided to do it with me. I went to a costume designer and she didn't know what she was doing. So we developed it ourselves. I went into my daughter's office. I said, Kirby, what do you think about my tree costume? And she says, Oh my God, Dad. Don't tell anybody your name. I don't want to be associated with you. So I give him a name. His name is Tremendous Tom. And he walks around to give out, trees are the answer stickers, which I've got some up here for you, as well as handouts on the benefits of trees. And this is my older sister decided to join me. And I tell you, I was afraid to do this. I speak a lot, and I was still afraid to do it. My biggest problem is I spend 2 hours and I'm laughing so hard my sides hurt after 2 hours. It is some of the most fun of anything I've ever done. Oh, and they gave me a botanic name, Quercus houseri. So, all right, I'll quit fooling with you guys. One other brief thing, the neighborhood forest overlay was another part of our negotiations over the Dallas tree ordinance. And what I need your help for, this is a citywide overlay. We asked the city development director, how can we establish a development or a district that's like the historic district that protects trees? And she didn't know. So we said, how about a historic district just for trees? How about a forest overlay? And she said, yeah, that might work. So we negotiated with the builders are not happy about it. Developers could care less. Because now you can, if you have more than 10 properties in a row in a contiguous area in Dallas, and all of you want to help preserve and better maintain your trees, you can enact now a neighborhood forest overlay. The only reason it's not taking off is because you have to put a deed restriction on your property, and not everybody wants to do that. There's a group in Kessler Park, there's Forest Hills, Little Forest Hills, some of those folks are looking at it, and a group up in Bluffview. So I'm very hopeful that some of them can group together and be able to do that. You know, I always wanted to preserve trees. Tree ordinance doesn't preserve squat. That's the bottom line to that. This is the only other way that we can find that you can actually preserve trees on these smaller homeowner lots. Everybody's going to call and complain to you guys. Developers are coming in, they're rebuilding the houses, and they're cutting down all the trees, which changes the neighborhood's look and complexity. So there's a website. I don't know if you want to go, but it's on the city's website. And if your neighborhood wants to have help, call me. I'll get the chief arborist out there, and we'll get out there and take a look at it. And Mary wanted me to say a few things also about Indian marker trees. It's something we studied for 25 years. Going to our first Indian marker tree, I was talking to some of the elders, James Yellowfish, who's now a pretty good friend, and I said, you guys seem to know a lot about nature. He took off his glasses and grabbed me by the shoulders, and he said, we are one with nature. And it raises goosebumps on my arms to think about being one with nature. We live indoors, we're so far removed from that, but that one phrase kind of made a naturalist out of me. But these are trees not always bent, a lot of them were bent to mark specific places and locations by the Comanches. The Comanches are the only American Indians that have recognized these trees. This is the first tree we recognized in 95 or 96. And since then, we've done an awful lot of research. There was 2 other groups that researched these trees, and both of them wrote books in 2011. The Mountain Stewards up in the Appalachian Mountains and Dennis Downs up in the Great Lakes area. I work with both of them. They both did their books, so I'm presenting their books to the Comanche elders, which I love to work with. If you've ever studied Indian cultures, you know that we're following them. And I was thinking on the way over here, what would the world be like if the Indians won instead of the settlers? What kind of a world would we have? It would be a whole lot better than what we've got right now. But anyway, they asked me to write this book and tell the public about some of their trees, which is what I did. There's a copy of it up here if you want to look at it. And they have absolutely changed my life. If you're able to go up to Oklahoma in the 3rd week of September, they always have the Comanche Fair, which is like a big circular road. They have the drummers and the dancers and the horsemen come through. They have riders come through, and the elders come through, and a bunch of others. And I love working with these people. A number of years ago, I saw the elders. It had been raining, and the elders were in their truck. And I'm over talking to them, and we're just joking and having a good time. And they said, well, our floats got rained out. There are not a lot of people coming this year. Do you want to ride with us? I said, yeah, I'd love to. I'd be deeply honored to be able to ride with the elders. So I hop in the truck, and we start going around. And one of our Historic Tree Coalition people calls me, "Where are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm riding with the elders this year." "Oh, you big liar." And I said, "No, I am honored. I am riding with the elders. You better take my picture when we come by." So he takes my picture, and he said later, he said, "You know, the guy next to me saw me take your picture, and he said, you know, that's the blondest Comanche I've ever seen." So we laughed about that. The elders, you know, when we had them here, I had them here about 6 years ago or so, to look at our Indian marker trees that we'd already recognized together. And they were apprehensive about even coming back to Texas. It's the first time the Comanche Nation as a nation have ever come back to Texas, and they were apprehensive about how we would treat them, which is kind of sad. So I won't go into that too much. Oh, and the other thing, I added this because I always forget. Any royalties or any money I make off the book goes to the Comanches and to the Historic Tree Coalition. So I don't make a penny of it. So how can you tell your neighbor is a tree hugger? Well, here's a pretty good example. Tree hugging snowmen, right? That's what everybody should build. All right. Do you guys have any questions? I know I'm almost out of time, but do you guys have any questions? No questions? About marker trees? Anything? Yes, sir.
How does the Dallas ordinance compare to other large cities?
It depends on which one it is. Austin's ordinance is a little bit more restrictive when it comes to oak wilt. You have oak wilt is a very big problem in Austin, and even on your smaller properties, if you're going to cut down a tree, you have to get a permit from the city. In Dallas, there's no permit. Anything under 2 acres, they don't care what you do. And that's why these builders can come into a neighborhood and just cut down all the trees to where there's hardly anything left. They change the whole neighborhood. It's kind of like the tornadoes. If any of you went through that tornado areas in there, that's some of the worst I've ever seen as an arborist. Even from the snowstorms and windstorms in the past. So, yes, ma'am.
I thought it was real interesting the way all the people and all the media were so horrified that all this beautiful tree cover had been lost when the tornado came through. But they never said anything when the developers come through and bulldoze it and build a new wall.
There you go. That's kind of the message. But to me as an arborist, some of these trees that were lost, I've been taking care of 30 or 40 years. So I go to my client's house. First of all, I couldn't even get to some of these clients for a week to 2 weeks because all the power lines were down or the trees were down in the area. So I finally get to some of these clients. I'm thinking of several of them that I had to park 6 blocks away and walk. And I started to walk down the street. And I thought, I don't know the address of this house. I knew the trees, and they're all in piles. They're all down on the houses and laying everywhere. So I finally get to the house, and she's waiting for me, of course. And all we could do was hug and cry for a little while because we had lost everything that I'd worked for and everything that she had built. She says, you know, I'm going to have to move. I'm not going to live here anymore. I'll have to rebuild my house, and I'm going elsewhere because I don't have my forest anymore. And I don't blame her a bit. You know, I told her, I said, we can rebuild your house. Can't rebuild a tree. So that's why it's very important to be not only caring for the trees that we have. People don't realize that these larger, older trees are doing 70 times more good than these newly planted trees or these little small crepe myrtles and things like that. We like the crepe myrtles as good color, but it's not doing that much for the environment. It's these bigger, larger, older trees that are doing so much more good. Yes, ma'am.
Steve, this may be a little out of the area you're discussing, but I've been wrestling with how to bring attention or apply pressure in some way to the tree maintenance companies that come into their apartment properties like the one I live on and basically decimate the trees that are there. They'll cut good wood, leave the dead wood, leave the mistletoe, cut in August. It's really hard to communicate to a corporate owner that your investment, your green investment here is being robbed from you.
You're exactly right. Amen. I mean, as arborists, we've seen that. We have industry standards that we abide by. If you want to top your tree, you want to strip out the grass, strip out the foliage to help your grass grow, and take too much, 80% of the foliage out, I'm not going to do it. I don't care about your money. I'm honored to be able to care for that tree, and I'm only going to do what's in its best interest, no matter what you want as the property owner. And I know that sounds odd, but the better arborists look at it that way. My job is to educate you. It's not good to top your tree. Don't do it. Don't strip out the foliage. Don't do these stupid things to the trees. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, I don't want to work for them. I don't really care about the money. I'm not in this business for the money, or I wouldn't be an arborist. I'd probably do something else. But I was one of those kids that always was outside. I was the guy that was up in the tree. But that's also why I became a master gardener, and especially a master naturalist, because it's my opportunity to educate people about how to properly care for trees. And for the gardeners, they're out in the community spreading the word out. They're out working with the community a lot to help to teach them how to properly care for the trees. Same with the naturalist, it's more about forest and forest ecology, but it's proper forest management versus some of the things that they do. So I'm with you, and it's a lot of times shopping centers where they want to raise the trees up to look like mushrooms. That's so that they can see the sign. Remember what I said, it's all about the money, boys. And to these people, they could care less. The tree's just in the way of their sign. That's all the tree is to them. And that's unfortunate. Our best job, or our best way to do this is to try to advocate and try to educate. Education is part of the key. Part of why I became a gardener, part of why I became a naturalist. Yes, ma'am.
So the city is putting together a climate action plan, and one of their major highlights is that they want to restore the tree canopy. So how do you feel that that is something that they will take on seriously and as aggressively as you would like? And if not, what would you recommend we put on that plan to ensure it does?
Well, that's a good question. They're not ever going to take it as seriously as we would like. And that's unfortunate. But it's like a very prominent person told me many years ago. People in Dallas are going to care about air quality when they're choking and gagging and not before. And I was kind of depressed about that. You know, I can think of another writer many years ago that said, is this green thing just another fad that's going to go away? And this is 15 years ago. I thought, God, I hope not, you know. I hope it goes somewhere. But that's where it's so exciting to see people like you involved. So what would you recommend? Dallas area, some of the parts of, like the industrial sections maybe have up to 10% canopy coverage, maybe. Those should be up closer to 20 or 25. Your residential area should be at least 30, 35%. So where do we want to be? 50% or more. You know, if you looked at climate change, you know that the scientists a few months ago came out and said, well, if you'll plant 1 billion trees, you can solve climate change. And to us, we're like, well, duh, we've been telling you that a long time. It's finally somebody's listening. So how do we plant 1 billion trees? Well, we've got herds of drones now that are being developed in Australia and a few other places, if you've seen this video, that can plant 100,000 seeds in a day, which is pretty incredible. So that gives me hope for the future, that they're using this new technology as a way to plant a lot of the trees that we're going to need. The problem is when you plant trees, it's helping generations to come. It's not doing a whole lot right now. That's the importance of preserving these large old trees, because we're not going to see these trees. Like this 400-year-old tree, it's lived how many generations already? You know, to be able to have a tree that old takes a long, long time. So, Mary, did you have something to add?
I do. I want to encourage you all. I know it sounds like it's a tough fight, but it's guys like Steve who went in early for a lot of years and cleared the way for us. And there's never been a time that has come more in environmental issues than this tree fight, and we know it because people are at the point of pain. And when there are developments coming in and the bulldozers are on the way, people are out there, they suffer it, we get the phone calls. So I would encourage you, you can do this. Just show up. The pressure is there. You can do this. You can definitely do it. And start in your neighborhood. Look in your backyard, history is living there. Go down to the county office and see who had the land before them. You'd love the stories that you find, and there are so many. And a tree that has a name sometimes, like the halfway oak, is a lot harder for somebody to justify taking down, so.
Yeah, I think one of the keys is increase your canopy coverage to cover that urban heat island effect. Anything that's brick, glass, and concrete, we want to shade it as best as we can. Go to white roofs. Look at the EPA website on urban heat island, and they'll give you a lot of ideas. We'd like to see our canopy coverage at least at 50%. In the industrial areas, at least up to 25 or 30%, which would be a huge improvement. And that involves tree planting. We've got to plant trees. That's the only way, because once they're gone, they're gone. But the other part of this is we've got to preserve more of these big old trees. So how do we do that? It's a money issue. Those trees, especially in North Dallas, are sitting on some very expensive property. It's more money to the developer to build a new big house than it is to save that tree. So that's reality, unfortunately. So.
Any other questions? Yes?
How do I get involved in your organization?
Just email us. You can go to our website, TXHTC. It should be up there at the bottom, txhtc.org, and we'll contact you back. We don't charge people membership fees. We got away from that many years ago because a lot of tree people just didn't have the money. We don't care about the money. We'd like to have you as a supporter. So are we out fighting for trees every day? Not as much as we used to, because there's, it depends. I've got to have somebody in the neighborhood that's willing to stand up for those trees. Otherwise, I'm going down there by myself, and they'll say, you're not in the area, you don't even live here, you have no standing. So they rule you out if you don't have a group or some people in the neighborhood that want to preserve those trees. And so that's what it takes to begin with. That's when we start getting more active and we get involved and we try to help you more.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it very much.
Now, before we adjourn the meeting, I'd like to have our own Molly Rook introduce Dr. Teresa Daniels.
Hi, this is Dr. Teresa Daniel, and she is our endorsed candidate to represent us again in Dallas County.
That's right. Thank you very much. And I'm very, very proud to be in the same area as this gentleman and as all of you, because I guess I'm one of the few elected officials that says it's very, very important to look at some of the issues that you've been talking about tonight. I'd like to just bring up a couple of the things that I'm involved in. One of them is 2 legislative sessions ago, the state decided in all of its wisdom that there would no longer be emission control programs in the state. So as a means of continuing some of the work of that, we're getting together with the downwinders, Dallas County, the City of Dallas, the City of Plano, DISD, to build and distribute air quality monitors so that we can continue to collect data on where there's where the worst of the air is. And you're absolutely right that one of the topics that I talk about when I go talking to people is, and it crosses the board, is asthma. Dallas County has our kids have 3 times the rate of asthma as the state rate is. And it's just luck of the draw to a certain degree. That's the way the winds blow up from Dallas County and up through Denton County. But that's a reality, because everybody knows somebody who's got asthma or allergies. And so they listen a little bit to what's going on. But that's one item that I think is something that I can do as a county commissioner. County commissioners, it's public health, public safety, and I can't think of any other public health issue than the quality of air in our breathing. A second thing that was also brought up by the speaker ahead, and that's looking at public health, in my estimation,
is also good nutrition and teaching people about healthy foods, good gardening techniques, and those kinds of things. I have 2 offices, and the second one is my road and bridge office, which is what a county commissioner does traditionally. Through a whole variety of instances, I now have a 12.5 acres and a 7,000 square foot building that, when you figure, okay, now what do we do? So I've partnered with Texas A&M AgriLife, and they have been building demonstration gardens on county property. In those gardens, this past year, we had our first harvest, and we harvested almost 1,000 pounds of tomatoes and cucumbers and lettuce and squash and watermelon, and they took a lot of the produce that wasn't picked off by the master gardeners who were there and shared it with the shelters in town. So that's my way of saying public health is good nutrition. So we're growing healthy foods in healthy environments, and then also teaching kids and adults and the master gardeners about better ways to do that. And they're just 2 examples. I think that it's really important. That's why I really appreciate the endorsement of the Sierra Club, because it is one of those things that you gotta pick and choose what you're going to spend time on. And to me, those things are very important. There's also there's the Texas Clean Air Association that is still kind of hobbling along, trying to figure out, okay, how do we maintain ourselves in a state that says they don't give a flip about clean air in any way, shape, or form. But it's still keeping that coalition together, keeping the industries and the organizations together who do think it's important and seeing what we can do to at least make our corner of the world a little bit better. The last thing I wanted to talk about, because I know that it is late and probably a few more things you want to get done tonight, is elections, because we are in election season. There's been lots of change this last year. We not only have new machines, we have electronic e-poll books. And I don't know how many of you have ever worked your elections, where you're either in your precinct or early vote. But one of the things you always had to do was you had to transfer over by hand. If a person voted an early vote, you had to transfer that information to another book so that you would mark off their name so they wouldn't vote again on election day, right? I know you've worked the elections, I've worked the elections, but now we have an electronic system where that information is electronically passed over, so therefore it's more accurate, I would think. And a lot less tedious for the election judges to have to do that. We have tried out all of that new equipment now twice in the election in November, the constitutional election, and then in the runoff elections that were held in HD 100 in Richardson and in Mesquite. I think there were a couple of other places in the state of Texas that had runoffs and stuff. There were some changes were made, and on Monday night when I was watching returns from Iowa, I was going, shoot, can this happen here? So immediately on Tuesday morning, I talked to Tony Pippen's pool and said, okay, have we tested absolutely every module so that we don't have in Iowa here? And I have been assured repeatedly that we tested once, we tested twice, and we tested it again. We have also invested in additional people to be available to be on call if in fact there are issues that happen on the primary election. And part of it is, I'm a little bit selfish in the respect that I'm also on the ballot, so I want it to go well. But to me, it's still central. Voting is one of the things that makes Americans a little different and are the central part that we wish that we have in our lives. The last piece is the voting centers. And I have a visual brochure out tonight today that says Dallas County voters can vote anywhere in the county. interestingly enough, it was almost an even break. It was like a 46 to 54% of people who were voting in their traditional precincts, even though they could vote anywhere in the county. And I'm taking, people says, yeah, they're not really taking advantage. And I'm going, wait a minute. What that says to me is they're looking for what's a convenient place for them to go vote. And frankly, my dear, if they go vote, that's what I think is the important point there. So that I'm obviously looking forward to seeing what's going to happen this primary. They're promising that it's going to be a huge turnout. And so I'm optimistic that Dallas County is up to the challenge. If you see things that don't look right, please, please, please call the elections department or call me. I'd be happy to pass that along, because those are it's eyes and ears all over the place that make a difference, and make sure that in fact we've got the best system that we can have. But I'm excited to be in my position as county commissioner, which is why I want to go for 4 more years. I have somebody that said to me, you've been there 7 years, why haven't you fixed homelessness yet? It's not quite that easy, for one thing. I know everybody in this room, you're kind of smiling a little bit, because you understand that we ended up with all the hard issues, but they know that's okay too. So thank you very much for what you do here, for what you do year in, year out, for the good of everybody, and going for clean air and for more trees, and to really respect the lives that all of us would like to have here. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Daniel. Okay, I think we're done for the night, so if you want to go eat at the Blue Goose, we'll be over there in a little bit. We have some cleanup to do here first. So the meeting is adjourned.